Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Lag Program 2, Space Program 2, where we are almost in line here for our inclination change burn. This is, of course, going to be in a lot of days, but that is fine. For now, we just need to head over a little bit further and then warp on through. So that'll be fine. And then, of course, we're going to need to do the actual burn, and the question then becomes, once we get to Eve, are we going to have enough DV to break into an orbit? It doesn't matter what orbit it is necessarily, because we can always just bring one of these over by itself and hook it up and get rid of this one. And that would definitely give us the DV that we would need. But for now, we don't need to be too concerned about that. For now, I just want to make sure we're in our correct inclination. So we're pretty much in line here at this juncture, and I'm going to warp us forward. So that looks good. Goodbye, Kerbal. You will cease to exist shortly, at least on our screen, if not in our hearts. Fantastic. This is definitely taking a bit to hop into the warp, but there we go. Now we're warping reasonably nicely. So, farewell, Kerbal. It was nice knowing you. Now we have just the stars as a backdrop for our slideshow. It's amazing. Okay, so we're currently like 3 hours away from this is where it dropped us, and that's kind of normal for KSP2. I wish it wasn't, but it is. We're going to have to warp a little further. So I'm going to hit this button again as soon as we're done warping. There we go. And now we'll start up another warp, and we'll just go in another 3-ish hours. And this should deposit us like 40-ish seconds away, and then we'll manually warp from there. But it's definitely a whole process. No doubt about it. Maneuvering this thing is kind of wild. We're out of communication range, but that doesn't matter. It seems like that's not implemented in KSP2, but we also have pilots here, so it's not a big deal. So that is fine, and we're about 2 minutes and 16 seconds away. Okay. As soon as the game is caught up here, we're going to start warping a little bit further. There we go. And we're going to drop out of this warp about 10 seconds away from the burn time. That seems to be about the right timing, approximately. Okay, so we're going to cruise on through here. It's going to take a little bit to go 2 minutes at 10x speed, which is actually kind of like 2x speed, but yeah, it's pretty close to 2x speed. I think it's a little faster than that, but regardless, it doesn't really matter. So here we are, of course, at full electric charge, and that's wonderful. We're not really too concerned about electric charge going forward, at least for now. But as long as this thing gets into our desired orbit, it seems pretty good. I'm not concerned about too much of anything, really. Remember, our desired orbit is circular 120 kilometers, at which point we just start our braking burn. So we've got about 40 seconds left here in this warp for our inclination change. 30 seconds left. 25. 20. 15. 10 seconds, exiting warp. And it brings it down to 5, 4, 3. Okay, yep, this is about right. So now things are, of course, going to be slow, and that is expected. We're turning the physics back on at this moment, and we'll be firing up this burn, in theory, in 3 seconds. But in reality, it'll be like closer to 30, probably. So that is, you know, very exciting. 2 seconds remaining at this point. Wonderful. Almost there. 1 second remaining. And we will be commencing this firing right about now. Excellent. And now we enter 10x warp, because this is going to be a 3 minute and 22 second burn, and we don't want the physics to be going haywire while we're doing this. So excellent. We will enter warp here, and we will stay here until there's about, again, 10 seconds remaining in this burn. Are we actually making any progress here? I'm wondering. Yes, we are. This is actually working correctly now. Okay. Good to know. So I guess that's fine. Let's get this back to a point where we can kind of see what's going on. There we go. Cool. So about 2 minutes and 40 seconds left on this burn. This is going to burn a fair amount of fuel, but that is absolutely fine. And this was claiming we had 40,000 meters per second. I never thought that was real. This is now claiming 11,350, and that's probably a little bit more accurate. So that is okay for right now. We're going to have to check our staging as we stage things, but we should have plenty of Delta V left in these outer tanks for our transfer burn to Eve. The question is, will we have enough on those inner tanks for specifically the braking burn? And that we'll find out. But who knows for right now? For right now, there's no real way to tell, since maneuvers are fundamentally broken. So that is okay. We've got 50 seconds left in this burn. We're just going to have to wing it. And if we have to burn off some of the fuel from these outside tanks, we could bring over a refueling flight. Figure out exactly how much fuel we're lacking, and from there, just bring it on over. That is a theoretical possibility. We would need to refuel. We don't want to activate this engine because we would still need the docking port for the refuel. Oh, hang on. Hang on, we're overshooting this. Cut the engine as soon as the game lets us. Okay. I cut the engines. I don't know what's happening right now. But eventually the game will get caught up. Okay. Engines are indeed cut. Let's put this on anti-normal, and I want to check to see how we did. I'm not convinced that we made it all the way, but we also may have overshot. So let's just get zoomed out here and see what this looks like now. Well, first things first, we're going to have to set Eve as our target. Assuming the game lets us. Well, let's get zoomed in over here, I guess, and see if we can do it this way. We shouldn't need to do this, but I was not getting the right-click menu. We are still not getting the right-click menu. I'm going to try to click and hold. Okay. I'm going to pause the game and set it as target with more frame rate. Okay, so now that we have more frame rate, let's see what we're at. Negative 0.1. Okay, let's hit the play button, and let's bring up our thrust a little bit here. I think we're burning the wrong way here. I think we've overburnt. I'm going to call this good enough. So sometime around here, I want to create a maneuver plan. I really wish we could do this with the game paused, but unfortunately it does not allow it. So I'm going to grab this retrograde node, and we're going to pull this right on back and see what this would look like if we were to burn here. That must be an encounter. Right? Because it's fundamentally broken. But what are the odds that we nailed an encounter on the first go? I don't know if that is an encounter. It shouldn't have been, I don't think. Not that far out. No, I don't think that's an encounter. So how can we determine where we have an encounter if it's going to fundamentally break like this? That's going to be interesting. Well, let's try deleting this maneuver node. Coming down over here and bringing in a new one. Okay, we go retrograde. So it breaks after 600 meters per second. That's when it breaks. Interesting. And then if we did this, we bring it back, that's 465. But if we... Oh, come on. Let me select the maneuver here. If we grab the node here, and we bring this up... Actually, it broke after 500 there. And if we move this all the way around... Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to have to restrict this to fairly low DV amounts. So what that means is, at the periapsis, we should create a maneuver plan, and we should drop our apoapsis as far as we can without the maneuver breaking. So that means taking this down to somewhere around here or so. About 500 meters per second. Then, from there, we can theoretically start up another maneuver node somewhere around, like, here, as a hypothetical. I'm going to delete this maneuver node, and we're going to go with it after we've done this plan. Yeah, you can see that just fundamentally instantly breaks it. But we can then try to go for a rendezvous once we're a little lower and have a little less DV. Because it seems to break after around 500-ish DV. So that is not ideal. But we have no idea where Eve is going to be when we are here, right? I mean, ideally, it would be here and we would be here. I really wish we could see an actual transfer window here. But if we were to tune this up much more, it breaks. It does seem to break after 500 meters per second. So it seems like we're restricted to doing 500 meters per second at a time. Or under 500 meters per second at a time. So let's just align for this burn, and we'll just deal with that restriction. It's certainly not ideal, but I'm sure we can find ourselves a rendezvous even with this weirdness going on. This is definitely a new and exciting bug. There's no doubt about that. We're currently on our way over towards getting aligned for the retrograde node for this burn, and that's going to take us a little while to get there, for sure. That said, I've been noticing our turning is a fair amount faster since I started up the game here, and I think that is because we've burnt off a lot of the weight back here. I mean, you can see we burned off like almost 600 tons of hydrogen fuel. So that's a lot, no doubt about that. Our turning is absolutely quite a lot faster, but it's still a little on the slow side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring us over manually to get this turning done a little faster, but we will be back once we are pretty close to done with this turn. And in fact, we need to be heading not to the retrograde node, but to the maneuver node. So there we go. See you guys in just a moment. Okay, so here we are, very nearly in position for this burn, and this is going to be a little bit more turning here, but as you can see, I wanted to point out, we're turning at a pretty appreciable rate. When you figure the rate at which the game's time is ticking, this thing turns pretty fast, actually. Not necessarily in terms of real time, but in terms of in-game time, it turns quite fast. No doubt about it. The main issue, of course, is the frame rate. But that should improve as we get through bits of this, in theory. For now, of course, we're basically in position for this warp, and I'm going to commence the warp starting right about a little further. Now. Okay, so we're going to warp on through here. This is going to be a 21-day warp, and then we're going to have about a 4-minute burn. So this is probably going to drop us too far away again. We're going to have to do multiple warps to get to the correct position, but that's fine. Cool. So we are cruising forward at a reasonable-ish rate, and the real question is the same as it has been, right? Do we have enough to get to Eve and get into an orbit? If we do, then the question is, do we have enough to get to our target orbit? If we don't, we're going to have to tap into some of our reserve fuel, and that means we'll probably have to do a refueling mission, is my guess. Because this thing, it's got some pretty thin margins. No doubt about it. We'll see how it goes. We are currently about 20 minutes away. I would like to warp a little bit further than that, of course. So let's warp on forward a little further. Although we could commence this burn now. And I think once we get in one more warp here, I think I'm going to commence the burn slightly early. It should be fine. So we're just going to warp in, and I mean, our apoapsis and periapsis are broken, but we have fairly long apoapsis and periapsises, so I'm just going to commence this burn now. And we're going to go up to 10x, and of course we're just waiting for the physics to get turned on. There we go. And now we're going to go up to 10x, and I'm going to do this not necessarily through the maneuver node, which I suspect is fundamentally broken. Instead, we're going to do this through the map view, which, of course, as soon as the physics gets turned off, we'll be able to take a look at what we've got going on here. Okay. So we're just looking to put ourselves into this kind of intermediary orbit at this point. So that'll be fine. Once we get this in, hopefully we can go fishing for a encounter. That's the goal. Okay. So this is moving around here, but it is moving quite slowly. That is expected. This is supposed to be a 4-minute burn, right? So that is fine. Let's focus on Kerbal for right now. And I do want to position ourselves basically in this exact spot. So this is fundamentally broken. We don't actually care about it. I'm just going to position ourselves retrograde here. And we're just going to bring this in to approximately right about here or so for the periapsis, or like right here or so. So that'll be absolutely fine. We'll just continue to warp through this. In fact, we could probably crank this speed up a little bit further, up to 50x. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So then I would look to deposit us somewhere approaching partially out of fuel orbital event. No, we are not. We're nowhere near out of fuel for anything. I don't know why it thought that we were. But I guess this is reasonably fine. Let's go ahead and kill our throttle, and let's see if we were to burn at this periapsis. What might this look like if we try to bring this in? How broken is this? Okay. So it still breaks after a while. That's noted. I want to grab the prograde marker, thanks. Okay. So it's currently braking as we approach the 400 meter per second mark. That's noted. I'm going to commence this burn again. And I'm going to warp us forward a little bit. Because I want to bring this in ever so slightly further. Okay. So let's continue to burn here until we have about 1100 meters per second left in these tanks. Which will be pretty soon, actually. Okay. So I'm working on cutting this throttle. Eventually it'll happen. This is not a very precise science. That's for sure. Come on, throttle. We're turning the physics back on right now. There we go. Throttle is cut. Okay, so at this point, if we were at this periapsis and we attempted to do a maneuver plan, this is still going to be broken, in theory. Yes. The question is this a problem with the proximity? In which case, how can we figure this out if we can't use maneuvers? We would just have to YOLO it and just try burns at various positions and revert the save, I guess? If we didn't get the correct position? Hang on. So that kind of works. That's only 200 meters per second. So it's not proximity. It's actually the amount of time. Okay, so right around here then, we're going to want to circularize this. That's noted. That's too much. Okay, we can't actually do it that much. But what we want to do then is we want to position ourselves for this burn. And then at the periapsis here, we want to circularize it, which we can definitely do. From there, we can go for an encounter. It's going to be a lot less time efficient because we're probably going to have to do orbits. Out here, it was less likely that we'd have to do orbits because we were at a much higher orbit, but our maneuvers are broken. We can't do it, so we're going to have to go in tighter. There's no real way around it, I don't think. We have to know where this is going to be when we cross the orbit, and that's the only way to really know that, other than, like, running the calculations by hand, and that's something I'm not qualified to do. So we're not going to do that for now. We're just going to have to lower down our apoapsis here and just go for it this way. It's going to be a little tedious, no doubt about that, but I don't see another path forward. Hopefully, once we get this circularized, and it'll need to be a little bit more DV than this, but hopefully once we get this circularized, we'll be in a position where we can just do this normally and not have the maneuvers be fundamentally broken. That would be awfully nice. However, I'm going to go ahead and put a cut in here. It's a little early, but this is going to be a bit of a process. So we're going to hopefully get our maneuver set up to get us our rendezvous next episode. That's the idea. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.